This is the Education Business Podcast for consultants and business owners providing services in schools. I'm Claire Riley, and I'll be sharing how to start, grow and scale your education business. You'll be able to tell from the title of today's episode that it's going to be a personal episode. I know that I generally do bring the personal into every episode, but this one is particularly personal. And so I want to talk about, what does me getting an ADHD diagnosis have to do with business? And it's funny because I feel like being diagnosed with ADHD has everything to do with business. So where should I begin? Well, let me start kind of at the beginning, sort of, not really, because I'm going to start as an adult, not as a child. So I suppose I'd seen little tidbits here and there across social media for some time, and I'd heard people talking about it, and I'd read about it, and I'd definitely related to what was being said about ADHD. And I guess it was just a question at the back of my mind that was unexplored because I had so much on, and it was not something that I was bringing to the forefront at the time. And I know it's supposed to be quite big on TikTok, but I've not really opened myself up to that, to be honest. But I do know that there are a number of female entrepreneurs making this same discovery at this time as females and as adults. So in my mind, it was unexplored. And then the next thing that happened was that Denise Duffield Thomas, and you've heard me mention her on the podcast before, she had said that she'd gone ahead with getting a diagnosis for ADHD. And if there's one person that I feel like I relate to in business in the way that she describes how she does things, then Denise I really, really relate to, especially the relationship, because she runs a business with a husband and I do the same thing as well. So everything that she described pretty much I resonated with, and it was normal for me. I just thought that that was the entrepreneurial way. So when I mentioned then her podcast just in passing to someone, and that it made me wonder, whether I possibly had ADHD too. And what I want to say is, when I said that out loud, I thought it so many times over a long period of time, but I only said it out loud that once. And they opened up a whole new world for me, did that person, because it turned out that this person was actually exploring the possibility of having ADHD themselves. And the most interesting thing that they said to me at that moment was that they'd watched a webinar about ADHD in women and they felt like they related to it. But while they were watching, they thought of me and they thought that I would relate to it even more. And I thought, oh, this is weird. So this was a bit of a catalyst for me. So if you're listening, you know who you are. And I just want to say thank you so much for helping me to take that next step, because it was really important to me. So they were watching a bunch of webinars for women with ADHD for their own learnings. And so I just got the link from them and I watched all the replays, and it was so insightful. There were so many questions I had around the way that things had gone in certain situations in my life that I found quite confusing. So I just set on the quest for answers there and then. And I think it's funny that, looking for we're on the quest for answers, and we're always looking, aren't we, for relatability. We want to relate to people. And I know a few years ago in Classroom Secrets in our business, and when I was seeking mentors, I looked more for relatability rather than to be pushed, because I was resistant to being pushed even more out of my comfort zone, because I'd already got myself quite a lot out of my comfort zone. But I looked for mentors who shared content that I related to, rather than ones who were showing me how I could push ahead and who I could really learn something new from. Anyway, so eventually I got to the point where I knew I needed to go and get the official answers, find out whether it was a thing or it wasn't a thing. So I booked an appointment to get an assessment, and I was diagnosed with combined type, which apparently is quite rare actually, which is hyperactive and inattentive at the same time, which probably seems ridiculous and confusing, but it means I can be super into an idea and just show unbelievable enthusiasm, particularly in that moment that it's mentioned. And equally, I can also just zone out in the middle of sometimes a conversation, and then kind of come back. And when I got the diagnosis, I smiled. I was actually pleased because everything made sense. I was pleased because everything just made sense. It all came together. Being so creative made sense. Having a million ideas made sense. Feeling like I'm often on the periphery socially made sense, which might surprise you. But that is a feeling that I have a lot. Past friendships and how they've gone made sense. Needing validation from others, maybe when most people wouldn't want that, made sense. Feeling emotions and taking things personally made more sense to me as well. And also why I seek to be understood so much and sometimes feel misunderstood made sense to me as well. It all made sense. So this is all great and everything, but what has it actually got to do with business? And I think it's got everything to do with business. What I've realised over the past few months, and it's actually worried me a little bit recently, if I'm honest, is that everything that I do at Classroom Secrets and Education Business Club, everything I'm passionate about, is ultimately about me sharing my ADHD with others. I've even worried through this process that this podcast is not about succeeding in business, but actually about using strategies to help you cope with ADHD. I don't know. You tell me. You tell me what it's about. But those are the things that I've ruminated on, I've worried about. You see, as an ADHD person, I'm very, very good at creating solutions to problems. Your problems, my own problems. And so I set up my own company so that I can be ADHD and be comfortable with it. So I can work the way I want to work, do the work I want to do, and have the flexibility that I want to have. And the way we work at Classroom Secrets massively reflects my ADHD. The way that I encourage the team to work is entirely centered around me being ADHD. I just had no idea. I just thought I was some new age kind of CEO entrepreneur. We have walking meetings. I tell colleagues to do their dishwasher on a call if they don't need to be on a screen. And I thought that was about helping people to manage their time better, but what that really is about is because I can't listen properly if I have nothing to physically do at the same time. Um, and so that kind of dual tasking really, really worked for me. And so I'm just like, well, why would you not do that? I just had no idea that I'm this way for that reason. And so I just thought I was opening up a new creative world for everyone, and I thought that my thinking was just outside the box. And obviously, I guess I still am opening up a new world. My thinking is outside the box. But it was for reasons that I didn't understand before that I understand now. I change my schedule every 4 weeks because I get bored of the old one. I use organizational apps and then I find a new one and then a new one and then a new one. And all of that just explains so much. How hurt I felt in situations, both in life and in business, how personally I've taken things, the leadership journey that I've been on and the struggles with that in the past. But what I do want to say is I'm so grateful to have had this journey and not actually known. And the fact that I've figured it out anyway. I've had these experiences and then I've figured it out anyway. I feel like it's really important to share because being ADHD is very entrepreneurial. It's why I'm here. It's why I set up Classroom Secrets in the first place. And I've learned that it's a true superpower. And I'm actually really grateful to myself for pushing through the difficult times and coming up with really excellent coping mechanisms, really, to help me use ADHD to my advantage rather than for it to be a stumbling block. So I just wanted to share that with you because to me, it's the whole reason for business. And I feel like it's given me permission to understand that is one of my superpowers in business. And I know that you appreciate the honesty that I bring to the podcast. And maybe, particularly if you are a woman, maybe it's something that you're exploring for yourself too. And I know that it's helpful if I share that journey with you. So if anything in this episode has resonated with you and you want to reach out, then find me on Instagram. I'm at Claire Riley, teacher entrepreneur, and I would love to have a chat. Thank you for listening to the Education Business Podcast. To get more information to grow your business, sign up at educationbusinessclub.co.uk.